Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we turn to talking about the latest epic film release from one of the world's greatest film directors, Quentin Tarantino. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood comes out this weekend, and like most things popular and anticipated these days, it's not without its attacks coming from the social justice warriors. Quentin Tarantino is particularly troublesome for them, for the SJW crowd, because not only is he wildly popular in the film industry, but also he's become this despite the radical PC culture that appears to be trying to close in on him and rope Quentin in with this latest release. Complaints about this picture came in earlier this year, in fact. Before the movie was even released, reporters were complaining about Margot Robbie's limited role all the way back in May, a few months ago. Fortunately, Quentin Tarantino himself snapped back at these SJW reporters, even saying he completely rejected their hypothesis. This was clearly a good and strong and self-defensive move by Quentin too, and yet another sign that this guy is not only a badass, but he's on our anti-SJW side too. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous these left-wingers even expected Quentin Tarantino to sympathize with politically correct culture in the slightest. This is the same guy who made the very bloody and stylized violence-filled Kill Bill series, and also the profanity-laden drug-filled Pulp Fiction film, among other non-PC projects. And now with Once Upon a Time releasing, some of the same SJW complainers are coming back out in the media to attack Tarantino and his new project again. And we'll get to those complaints soon too, but first, let me give you a quick, brief, hot take reaction to the movie itself. I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood last night, opening night, and I was rather pleased with it. Wasn't sure I'd like it too much too, since it does seem a bit long and somewhat drawn out going into it, but by the ending, oh my god, I absolutely fell in love with this picture. No spoilers here today though, of course, but let's just say this. The film ends in a pretty bloody catastrophe that really brings the whole picture together real well. And the reason it's so long is the movie is kind of a mood-setting piece, a slice-of-life kind of picture showing the viewers what it's like to be a TV star back in the 1960s. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, of course, visits 1969 Los Angeles, where everything is changing at that time. In it, TV star Rick Dalton, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, him and his longtime stunt double Cliff Booth, played by Brad Pitt, well, they make their way around the industry, a film industry which they hardly recognize anymore. And this is the 9th film from writer-director Quentin Tarantino, featuring a large ensemble cast and multiple storylines too, in a tribute to the final moments of Hollywood's golden age. And while I do think it could be seen as a mixed bag somewhat, especially if you're not a fan of the genre or director already, but if you are and you are into it, it's an absolute blast to watch. The cast does wonderfully in Once Upon, and that includes Brad Pitt, who, in my opinion, steals the show here. And as for the complaints about Margot Robbie's character not getting enough screen time, well, after watching the movie, those complaints are absolutely unfounded. Not only is one of Robbie's scenes one of the best in the movie, the scene where she watches her own film within this film, but also Margot Robbie's Sharon Tate character, based on the real-life actress, she's pretty much the heart of the whole movie. Sure, she may not be on screen for as many minutes or get as many lines specifically as the others, but to complain about that after seeing her importance in the movie is really just nitpicking. And it's also just SJWs not understanding what's really going on here. But of course, as mentioned earlier, Once Upon still has its detractors. Radical leftists can't stand when celebrities don't cater and kowtow to them absolutely and completely, so it's no surprise they're coming after the non-PC Quentin Tarantino once again. This time it's more complaints about his use of women, and even complaints that Tarantino supposedly exploits them. What the heck? The dude is hiring striking, amazing, and beautiful leading ladies, and paying them millions of dollars while he does it. But sure, he's exploiting these actresses, or whatever, right? Regardless, let's go ahead and see where this all goes. The article we're going over today is from the New York Post, and it's called Quentin Tarantino's Exploitation Has No Place in Hollywood Anymore. This should be good. Let's go ahead and check this thing out. Quentin Tarantino's new movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, is a love letter to the film industry days of yore, the late 60s to be exact. Men were men, female actors were starlets, and the words Me Too had yet to be hashtagged. Thank God. It shouldn't come as a huge surprise that a guy who partnered with producer Harvey Weinstein up until the latter's shattering downfall would feel a bit nostalgic about the good old retro days in the film biz. But just like Harvey, Tarantino and his oeuvre are things that should now move quietly into the boy-bye column. There was a time and place for Tarantino, who gave us his share of strong female characters, Uma Thurman's Beatrix Kiddo in Kill Bill, Pam Grier's fierce Jackie Brown, but never strayed far from his urge to exploit in his films, fetishizing the N-word and relishing the sadistic treatment of women. Look no further than Jennifer Jason Leigh's Daisy DeMurgo, taking a truly stupendous number of punches in the face, and then much worse, over the 3-hour span of Hateful Eight. Jesus Christ, can this writer try and slander this guy any harder? First of all, there's nothing wrong with being nostalgic about the 1960s. Sure, there were things that were wrong back then, just like how there are things that are wrong with every generation. And let's not pretend that the 2010s, current year, are all that much better. Sure, a lot of things are better. There's less violence and more progressive thoughts on male and female interactions. And we've advanced in many areas like technology and education, but this generation still has many problems of its own too. So I find this sort of looking back at history, the way the writer's doing it here, well, it's very pretentious and disingenuous too. The New York Post writer and other SJWs, they like to pretend they are perfect and things are awesome now. And they are high and mighty and better than everyone else in the past too. You're not though, buddy. Just because you made some bogus Me Too bullshit starting in 2017 doesn't mean you're saving the world from all its problems. And women aren't doing much better in the current year in some ways too. Now we've got ladies becoming these radical, offensive, often racist feminists who of course hate on men every chance they can get. So while they claim people in the past, like in the 1960s, well, they claim they hated women back then, but well, nowadays you just hate men in the present. And is that really much better? And then there's this Weinstein stuff, which is a bit harder to defend, admittedly. The guy was a terrible piece of crap, of course, but I'm not sure we should be condemning everyone who's worked with Weinstein either. Unless you have actual sex crimes to pin on Tarantino himself, I don't think looping him in with this guilt by association crap is going to work here. For all we know, Quentin Tarantino was a major opponent to Harvey Weinstein in their time working together. For example, I know Brad Pitt was doing this, and Brad Pitt was one of the few actors in Hollywood who called Weinstein out at the time. And that's a pretty big coincidence too, since Brad Pitt is in this new Quentin Tarantino movie. So wouldn't Quentin Tarantino hiring Brad as his lead for this movie say something about that? And also, I think this situation is virtually referenced in this movie too, because come to think of it, Brad Pitt's character in Once Upon a Time has a chance to hook up with a young female in the movie. He has a chance to get some sex Hollywood style, but Brad Pitt's character actively refuses because he knows it's wrong and it could get him in trouble. And that doesn't sound like the kind of scene a pro-sex abuse person would put in their movie either. In fact, it sounds like the crew and Tarantino and Brad Pitt, they might have put this in their film to spite people like Harvey Weinstein. Finally, the latter complaints about female stars in Tarantino movies is probably the most absurd thing said yet. First, they half commend the guy for having 3 movies of his 9 having strong female leads. But then they complain about another movie of his having a girl that gets beat up. Come on, you can't expect women to be in everything and then dictate the kind of content they can be in down to a T. And having a character get beat up is not exploiting them or the women. Tarantino is using that person to portray a character. That's part of his greater story. Gosh, I feel like I'm teaching an intro to film studies course here or something. Like, how bad are these hack news people with movies and cinema and stuff? They don't even understand the basic premises, like that these are actors playing characters that aren't real and they're not really getting beat up. And them getting hit in a movie isn't exploitation. It's part of the story. Essentially, these SJWs want every part of every movie to be a woman, and they all have to be portrayed as perfect heroes who never get punched, and they can't have any obstacles or conflicts to overcome. And that suggestion is pretty much the most boring, lamest, stupid movie idea possible. And that's why these leftists never make films of their own. They just complain and try to ruin others. Tarantino's early movies were taut and sharp and shocking. The stuck in the middle with you torture scene in Reservoir Dogs. The banter and brutal killings done by John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson's hitmen in Pulp Fiction. Those flicks were endlessly quotable and addictively over the top, but in the end, made you feel as if you just spent a couple hours with a film geek who rarely got out of the video store, which is where the director used to work. Really? I feel like this writer is saying this like it's a bad thing, when it's really the opposite. In fact, film geeks have made some of the best movies in film history. You gotta love this medium if you're really going to make great work in it. So I guess this writer is trying to degrade Tarantino further here with this, implying he was some kind of film geek who worked at a video store before he started directing. But so what? That was almost 30 years ago. Since then, Tarantino has written, directed, and produced 9 amazing motion pictures that have proved his worth. The guy's won awards, Oscars, and gotten super famous. And he's worth millions of dollars as well. Not to kiss his ass too much, but yeah, Quentin Tarantino is the best, and this New York Post writer attempting to shame and take him down is simply pathetic. Tarantino worshippers and cinephiles will gush over his new movie's gorgeous depiction of old Hollywood, its twisty conclusion, and Leo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt's dedicated, leathery performances as, respectively, an actor and his faithful stuntman hanging out in the days leading up to the Manson family murders. But anyone who dared to ask why Roman Polanski's actress wife Sharon Tate, played by Margot Robbie, the ostensible heart of the film, is reduced to an almost wordless entity was summarily dismissed. I just reject your hypothesis, Tarantino growled at a reporter who asked as much at the Cannes Film Festival where the movie premiered. That's interesting because I reject some of Tarantino's hypotheses, including including the one about Polanski's innocence regarding the sexual assault of a 13-year-old. I also question his having Thurman do her own stunt driving in Kill Bill, during which she crashed and hurt herself, and his notion that dangerously strangling Diane Kruger on the set of Inglourious Basterds was the only way to get a genuine reaction shot from her. Okay, wow, a lot to unpack here. First, the part about Margot Robbie not getting enough lines and screen time has already been debunked pretty much. She was clearly the heart of the movie, and she was in it for exactly the amount of time the story needed her to be. Adding more lines and screen time for no reason would be pretty stupid, and maybe it would have appeased some SJWs like this New York Post writer, but it would have made this movie worse, which is far more important. As for the part about the Roman Polanski stuff, that's a little more complicated certainly. I'm not going to sit here and defend that guy who's been on the run from American law enforcement since the 1970s because of this incident, but I do think Tarantino has a right to his own opinion about this as well. If that's the stance he wants to take and the way he saw this situation, so be it. Tarantino might be right or wrong too, but we don't know. But one thing is for certain, Tarantino was in no way involved with that situation, and he's done nothing wrong himself. He's never committed any crime. He just weighed in on a long-running Polanski controversy that's divided Hollywood and the world for decades. Keep in mind too, hundreds of movie makers and dozens of high-profile actors have continued to work with Polanski over the years since this situation. For example, Jodie Foster, Kate Winslet, Christoph Waltz, Ewan McGregor, Sir Ben Kingsley, and Adrian Brody, just to name a few actors. And those people were working with the guy intimately on multiple month-long movie filming projects. Tarantino, on the other hand, has not worked with Polanski as far as I know. He just mentioned the guy in an interview in 2003, and then expressed his thoughts on the case he faced back in the 70s. And not to say he's innocent or not here, or to gauge the level of his crime and all, but with the knowledge we now have of Me Too and all that new stuff, and all these false allegations going around in current year, we really shouldn't be surprised if something was amuck back then too, and if there was some more nuance to Polanski's case as well, all things considered. Finally, the article complains about Tarantino having female actresses do their own stunts sometimes. I guess they should have special treatment on a film set or something. I don't know. The implication is Quentin is intentionally endangering actors because they're women, and that idea is absolute bollocks. Quentin's just filming movies with action-heavy, stunt-necessary stuff, and the actors involved are being heavily compensated too, so excuse me if I don't shed a tear about their small moments of fear or pain. And also, this implies Tarantino doesn't have men do stunts and risk injury too. He does. They just don't complain as much about it, apparently. Wow, shocking. The girls at SJWs complain more here. Imagine my surprise. In the end, all these attacks on Quentin and his movie and false claims of female exploitation, all they really prove is that SJWs will never be happy. They want female leads and perfect parts for ladies in every single major Hollywood movie there is. Not even one can dare to step out of line in current year. After the girls have taken over everything else important and major like Marvel films, Star Wars, Ocean's 11, Ghostbusters, Terminator, and so on, well now they're moving on to Quentin Tarantino movies, which is seemingly the last bastion in male-led films in American cinema. And well, the SJWs won't even let us have this one last thing, because they're culture vultures who love to take over everything, and will never be happy either, so they'll never stop until every movie, TV show, video game, and so on is completely female, minority, and LGBTQ dominated. Sad to see how far their anti-male movement has come these days, and how much the mainstream media and their pro-SJWs silliness has taken over the world. What do you guys think? Should the left be going after Tarantino for so-called female exploitation? Or are they just butthurt that the guys snuck in one last movie for ourselves in current year? I think they're jealous that Quentin Tarantino is so talented and popular, and his movies do so well despite not kowtowing to PC culture. Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see y'all next time.